Today I'd like to introduce to you Carsten VAN HUSEN from GameForge 4D to talk about the lessons that they've learned over the course of the last decade that we're just figuring out are important. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Carsten to tell us what he knows.
Thank you very much, David. Dobrý den, and hello to everybody here today. I'm going to talk, as David mentioned, about what we have learned in GameForge and how we see the last 10 years as community-based gaming. This is me. As David said, yes, it's more than a decade I have myself on my own back in community-based gaming, one might say social gaming, but that's so much a term of today. So I had the pleasure to start up, today one would say, Web 1.0 games company last century and trade sell it to a German internet service provider before then moving on into games for various topics in gaming with a big Italian internet service provider, and then since end of 2005 I've joined the team of GameForge, where we are obviously offering community-based online games. My company of GameForge is nearly 1 decade within community-based online gaming. It started with the first browser game in 2002, incorporated itself as a company only 2003. We are now servicing 20 games all across the Western Hemisphere in more than 50 languages, and the historic total of who has subscribed with us is above 300 million people. Whereas in the origin, we self-developed web games in the sense of persistent, massively multiplayer games and published them ourselves. 2 years later, when I joined, we started the second business of licensing in MMOs, client-based games which we do not develop ourselves but market all across the Americas, North and South, Europe and Arabia. For us, a big event has been last year when we bought more than 90% of a former competitor, another German company called Frogster, and who is also publishing MMOs. We found it's a good time to start a process of concentration in the industry. Today, I will, as already quickly mentioned, talk about online gaming in my company, what we have learned, how we have developed that, what we do. A little bit about what the situation is in the market, and lastly, the lessons that we have learned out of that. Obviously, let's start with the community-based online gaming as we could first-hand experience it. So as mentioned, starting 2002, we then set up the 2 different legal entities at some point in time, then got a venture capitalist in, and then happily being avoided with some prizes along the way. Starting in 2002, we had the O game, which was purely a community-based online gaming experience. In other words, one could say the O game is a 4X strategy game. As many of you will know, 4X is a term which abbreviates the strategic the strategic playing possibilities in such a title, and stands for explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. And that's simply and precisely what we have implemented back then in the O game. So it would not work at all as a game if it wouldn't be social. Everything you do is only because in conjunction with the other hundreds of thousands, and we are seeing peaks in O game at several 100,000 concurrent users, because the other guys are there to trade with them, to diplomacy with them, to fight against them. After that early start developing and self-publishing the O game, luckily we got some awards, I mentioned that. Nowadays we are still doing that and employing amongst our own headquarter and our new sister company Frogster 700 employees. We are, in addition to that, taking care of our 300 million users by a big network of freelance game masters, support managers, which are physically not in our offices, and we have contracts with more than 7,000 of these excellent people. Of course, also we need a lot of servers, which we put into the data centers, and we have then billing systems to get the money coming in, which totals at above 100 million euros per year for several years now. We do not specify exactly how much it is, because we are privately held and we prefer not to mention. So we simply refer to a terminology which is imprecisely stating that it is a 3-digit million euro annual turnover. Luckily, in concentrating on these things, we have been able to conduct our business in profitable form ever since we started it. So we have the biggest title is an MMORPG, a role-playing game developed in Korea called Metin 2. It is played by about 3 to 4 times the amount of active users that the game World of Warcraft has. So about 3 times, 4 times that size. Of course, business model in our community-based online gaming, free to play. Client is for free, and you do not need to pay for any time-based fee, no subscription or time limits. You can always play it, and we monetize this game as well as all our other games purely with microtransactions, cash items. Over these years, and I will in 3 weeks' time give the developer of this Metin 2 a 5-year Best Global Partner Award in a big journalist ceremony at the G-Star game show in Korea. So it's 5 years. We have it commercial in service next month. And we have seen a lot of changes to the game, obviously. Whereas at first, this experience, we did not have it in free-to-play. We did offer a subscription case. It was my personal thing, having done MMORPGs in Europe before, that I insisted on, let's change the game into a business model in which every user pays. Let's not fall into the trap, I said, to make content available for free. So in 2006, I touched the game, which already in Korea was serviced with a free-to-play business model, and remodeled it together with the developer so that I could charge a subscription fee. How wrong was I? I simply came from doing that before, knowing there's cost for every activity and every player is used to pay, so let's take that money. We did that for about 3/4 of a year with a so-and-so success. And then my founders said, come on, we have experienced the new business model of free-to-play already in our other business unit, in the web games. We now force you, Carsten, you need to change that thing into free-to-play. I was reasonably opposing that, but then at the end of the day they owned the shop and I was kind of forced into the best decision ever. After we had changed the game into the free-to-play model, it really went through the roof to the extent that we now have had it for several years with these massive concurrent user numbers peaking every day above 300,000 concurrent players. So one must say that obviously the business model has changed over these 10 years. Also, we needed to take into account that the user base is luckily growing and moving and growing out of the very niche, hardcore gamer base that we had back then. That also applies to a branding aspect. On the right-hand side, you see here that we obviously run a portal. In the past, we called it mmogame.com. We found that ultra cool. We spent a lot of money to purchase all these domains from people all over the world so that we have mmogame.xy, all sorts of different top-level domains, and of course the masterpiece, the .com. Obviously, it became clear as the market moved on and community-based online gaming went bigger, that it is a very narrow terminology, which does not obviously speak to everybody. What is that abbreviation for? And we threw it all away, the money we'd spent for the domains and of course much more on that marketing, and we have rebranded it simply to gameforge.com, which as a name of non-generic origin could principally filled with whichever value we can upload it with. So we see in these two examples that we are reacting to a more casual market, not only with business models, but even with the branding of the product. I mentioned already that it's two different topics that we are having, the two units of web games, in which of course you play in the browser, and the client games in which you install something to your local PC. Here are just some other examples of browser games of ours, such as the Icarium, which luckily not only pleased David for some time, but also others are still in there. All of them are luckily 6-digit concurrent users per day. Now, how have we moved ahead in these things, in these years? So, we believe it's kind of our USP to go local and to build a big number of fully localized different language versions for our product. We happen to be mostly Germans in our management, and we believe that the German market is the single language-wise biggest online gaming market in Europe. So we start the game always in German, fine-tune it, learn how to run it and monetize it best, and then fully localize it for many different other languages, as you can see in this example. On the other unit, which I have the pleasure to run, we are taking in the third-party developed games, and nowadays, after I have learned my lesson with the business model from Metin 2, I no longer fiddle around, and all of the then released cases are centering business model-wise around free-to-play. Our American guests may know the title Wizard 101, which is doing extremely well in the US and which has also served our as best launch ever in our company history since we tackled it this year. Saying that, it is good also because we nowadays run TV commercials in many countries. And that's a big learning which I'm going to repeat in the end again. Whereas 5 years ago, in basically all Western European markets, the novelty of the social game, of the community-based game, was putting you in the position of being able to market it with much lesser effort. You could put it, you make some PR, initial marketing, and there's a lot of viral going on. In the clearly heated up competitive situation that we see nowadays, you really need to invest much, much more. Thus, we even go into TV nowadays for that broader and much more extensive and expensive reach. Some other examples of the MMOs that we're doing. And here's again this Metin 2 thing, which after the change of the business model also went into many languages. And for a full-blown MMORPG, which consists of 500,000 words to translate with all the quests that you run through, it is very unique to go into so many languages. And we were the first ones to ever bring it into these countries. And although the countries, as it comes to online gaming market at that time, have possibly not been the biggest, we have very simply been able to gain basically the entire market at some point in time, and thus even a small market with 100% share has proven to be very interesting for us. So we did it even in Danish or Dutch, of course in Romanian and Russian, of course in Czech and Polish, and many more languages. Next, we are excited to bring a Star Trek official web game soon, and another title called Sphera. This is us. And now I have shed some light, I hope, on how we have developed in that sphere over the last 10 years. Now, a few comments about how I see what is relevant in the market. I have had that slide already at Casual Connect Hamburg. Excuse me, maybe I am overly proud as a German, but I believe it's a noteworthy thing as we are talking about the development of community-based online gaming over the last 10 years. In Western Europe, we have seen a certain shift. We have always had the leading UK market with all the developers and publishers dominating what is being played and sold. In the classic world of gaming, where you buy a PC box in the shop and then hopefully another addendum update later on, and then the French following up, of course, very well. That has been in online gaming over the last few years changed, so that the single biggest economy of Germany in that market has been able to surpass the others. In the past, for the biggest part of these 10 years, we have been saying that box sales, the sales of PC games and console games, could European-wise, in Western Europe, be accounted by 75% to the big three markets of Germany, France, and the UK. And if you would add the other two of Spain and Italy, so you can call it EFIX, then you would even have it up to 90%. We all are sitting here today because we can heartily laugh about these numbers nowadays. Now, everybody really takes part in all this, and the audiences we see in our company from Eastern and Central European companies are just great. And of course, yourselves know much better even. So that's a big change that has happened over the last 10 years. We have moved into the smaller countries, much more wider spread. Another huge thing, of course, is the mobile sphere. We are at the company Gameforge and many competitors of ours, providing games primarily at this moment for the platform of PC online. So if you look at this chart, it states what we all already feel by heart. Emerging markets will go online and more and more and more, and not with PCs, but with mobile devices. So it cannot be underestimated for people like ourselves to look into the future and try to make your products sound for this wave of new customers in emerging markets with mobile devices. Here's a number somebody put up who should actually know. The guys at Cisco obviously provide the pipes, and they should really know what's coming up. If they don't, we are all lost, so to speak, because we rely on that. And they luckily prepare for a huge increase, which is 60 times more mobile online users will be there in the future 5 years than last year. I believe that's a hugely impressive number. Looking at what the development community is doing, I'm really happy to be here today and look forward to meeting many of the regional developers here. And we see that the split is very fairly attributed. Who is developing the so-called free-to-play games? We have them all over the place. And we have, of course, more in Russia nowadays than in good old France, where we have seen all this successful PC and console business going on in the past. This is especially noteworthy to say because the slide has been piled up by a Frenchman who is running as a founder the consultant company ICO Partners. On the side of who is bringing that stuff into the market, we see two processes over the last years. One is that we already see, after many people have come on the market as a publisher, that some have left. Especially in the UK, several publishers went out of business. Some other first concentration processes have happened. I mentioned before, last year we bought for 70 to 80 million euros the listed company Frogster. In this year in Germany, a big TV station, Pro7 Set1, bought another long-standing, competent publisher called Burda, from a print house Burda. And obviously the activities of Mail.ru and iJet are mind-blowingly impressive. As a second trend in the publishing business, I see that the global champions are all coming in. And they are, of course, competing against us who happened to be here a bit before. When I say global champions, I am of course referring to companies which are worth several billion US dollars. Very recent rumor has it that for sure Shanda is opening up next year in Europe. Tencent has so far not been buying many in Europe, but are always looking out for things after a massive acquisition of Riot Games last year. And also the dinosaurs which Alex were talking about. Of course, Sony is going free to play. EA, especially the Ubisoft Frenchmen, are fighting back and are really putting all of their super old, well-established IPs into the free-to-play world. There are even more than these companies around, of course, so excuse that it is not complete. As it comes to the real social games, as they are called, of course, I believe the offering of diverse publishers is even higher. There are, in this list, for example, there are already 14 different publishers amongst the top 20 games being offered on Odno Klasnici. So what does that all should tell us, or maybe less big, what did I as a person take out of what I have been able to experience over the last decade? Well, why not? Let's put up 10 lessons learned out of that. I have touched on several of these topics before, but you cannot stress enough. The so-called small countries are really worth it. And it's not only for the revenue, it's also for the knowledge that you can, as a regional or global company, take out of it. We have found the best community Q&A ever in Poland. It's really amazing, but we have put out 20 games all across the Western Hemisphere, as mentioned, in over 50 languages in up to 75 countries. But what we see, congrats to our friends from Poland, they have always spotted best any bug which is possibly left. So a great service. I don't know what that is coming from, but that's our empirical data. Other things that we have learned in Eastern Europe is that the communities are really great and are in many cases less aggressive against one another and behave, so to speak, better. Of course, you need to follow the good old saying. Think global, act local. Very clearly, if you do not have it entirely localized to the thing, then better don't start. And thanks to our US-American friends, not all of them always did when they came here, which left us a lot of leeway to maneuver. So every support ticket is in the original language. Every player is in that language. We are even trying to separate out the one players of the one country from the other. It's not an international experience, but then again, it's not necessary to not understand one another. We prefer that people are feeling completely at home in their Greek language version. Obviously, if you do all that effort for making a local service, do not forget to also check with the local payment partners what users want, how they can pay most easily. And PayPal and credit cards obviously don't do the trick. Everybody knows that already. But 10 years ago, that was still some sort of a USP, which allowed us to grow into the position in which we are now in. Another thing seems extremely clear. You must have stable servers, but I have seen so many people failing on that, being it people which are not from the gaming sphere in the first place, where they have been a print house, a TV house, not concentrating on gaming so much, offering that to external agencies, which then didn't give it so much of an effort, and it failed. But also very dedicated big games companies, even ourselves, if you don't watch out and then you hit a very good run and then it's too much for your servers and then they go down for a time, you can never make up for that. So always really make sure you are completely up to date with your technical service quality. One hand, and community management on the other hand. I always say these two, I believe, is, so to speak, the hygiene factors for making a successful community-based online gaming service. And then on top you can add your USPs, but you must have excellent servers and community management. As I said, a bad news, really, as we see it. Entry has become much more difficult, and we need to spend much more on marketing, everybody in the market, than before. That applies both to direct, out-of-pocket media spending, but it also applies to what you need to be prepared to pay to affiliate partners. Whereas I can vividly remember end of 20th century, when I had my small little online games company, people were virtually as portals paying for the content. There was no revenue stream, simply for the vague possibility of getting advertising revenue. They were paying you as a developer to put your game there. And then we have seen a stage where we said, as a publisher, you affiliate partner, media outlet, portal, you don't need to pay us anymore, but actually we bring the content, the game, and the bag with the money. And then they were very happy, and were happy also with a small share of the revenue. But that has turned completely, and nowadays every media partner is asking for very high participation in the revenue pie. So, as the typical saying, content is king, the game must be generally somewhat great for the audience. It doesn't mean that it must be the deepest of all games, as we have seen in social games, but it must still be attractive. And even a smallish Farmville and clones, as you all know, is costing a lot of money to support because of the very frequent updates. So it all got more expensive, and thus also, if you want to buy in a license, it turned so much more expensive. Whereas 8 years ago, you basically could go to an East Asian company and say, you know what, we make you some revenue in Europe, and then we share. He said, excellent, here we go. Nowadays, he has learned that also we here in Europe can make real revenue, and he will ask a very high share of his investment by you in form of a license fee up front. So all that, of course, combines to be prepared for margins which are rather getting smaller than getting bigger. But then again, it all depends on your excellence in running the business. Relative, of course, to some people in big single markets like the US or in China or Korea, it's clear for us Europeans that we are smaller, fragmented, our marketing approaches must be much more microscopic, and we must take bigger care in doing specific things differently across the different territories. So it's clear that we have, at the end, a bit more on the cost side. My personal recommendation coming out of that would be that over the last 10 years, especially those have been successful who concentrated on just a few titles. And the people who have been as a publisher trying out too many, maybe didn't really make it. Obviously, the superior business model wins in the end. I have seen over that time from advertising revenue model for online games over to subscription business model over into freemium, free-to-play nowadays. And I believe that is simply the best value proposition for the user, and in principle also reaps the best money because it takes the entire spending propensity from every user individually. And lastly, the lesson learned 10, the mobile things again. So firstly, the emerging markets will all use it, so you better cater for it. And secondly, also your established users which are currently playing PC online will probably prefer tablets and mobile devices in the future. So these have been, oh no, there's one more, excuse me, oops. So maybe you want to talk to us if you are a developer of web games, of social games, or client-based MMOs. I'm very happy to talk to you over the next 2 days on whether we could bring your game into some of the territories we're in. And also, if you are a media outlet, a portal, or a distributor in these territories here, I'd be happy to talk about possibilities there. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to open questions if there are any. Спасибо.
Thank you, Carsten. Before I open the floor to questions, we probably only have time for maybe 3 or 4. Can you talk about how a developer in this room that would be interested in contacting you, what's the best way to do so, and where are you located here at the show?
Okay, so I have an email address there, but I will definitely hang out in the parties in the evenings, and otherwise I will be around here. And don't misunderstand me, I'm also booked in that hotel, so I can't be far if I'm doing some other things. But email address is always very welcome.
Okay, first question. You said that over the course of the years you saw that you're getting more casual gamers, and you rebranded your portal because probably casual gamers don't understand what MMO is. But my question is that when I see your product portfolio, your games, they're still the same, and you're bringing more games that, to me, they look like core games, like Star Trek and Sphera, and all of your competitors are bringing casual games, like, I don't know, Upo Logos, Lagunia, stuff like that is coming. You see that everybody loves Farmerama, and people are interested in Rama City and and Skyrama, stuff like, really games that are made for casual gamers. So why are you not updating your portfolio? Why don't you bring out products that could reach another kind of gamer, but you're just trying to change your games, the portfolio that already exists into meeting these the requirements of these players?
Very valid point you're making there. So we believe that although you need to change, you need to incorporate in what you can do and what you can't do. We are not a social games publisher per se. What we excel in is, in a way, hardcore-ish games. With the best product start we had, we are reaching out with the game Wizard 101 to a target group which is 8 to 15 years, which is, of course, future users, young users, something we have not had so much so far. So we will not move all the way into the Rama space, but we will try to incorporate, whilst doing still only few titles per year, a more open appeal into yet deep games. So we try to, or maybe we are still unable to think in easier categories for users, but we believe that's what we do, is deepish games which do indeed involve still, even if you call them a casual name, a substantial amount of the time of the user for understanding and really competing in.
As you were talking about the mobile games or the mobile audience growing tremendously over the course of the next 5 years, what do you guys expect the practical impact on your business to be, managing mobile online connected communities versus PC online connected communities?
It will not be able to do the business PC online 5 years in the future as it is possible to do it now. I'm really convinced. We are, as Gameforge, not the guy who is developing primarily for iOS, Android, or whichever mobile OS, but we are, of course, focusing on making our PC online games as a secondary platform to the fullest extent playable on mobile devices in the future. Because otherwise, I believe you will have significant difficulties 5 years down the road.
Hello. You said community-based online gaming sounds interesting, but how do you leverage actually community-based part of your games in your business model? How do you monetize community? I mean, if we get rid of the community from your games, how would it impact your games? Tell me more about this, please.
I'm not so sure whether I really understand the reasoning behind your question. I would initially think that there is no business anymore if you remove the communities. Okay. And I hope I was not expressing myself in that direction before.
Okay, clear. It's okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Hello. I have a question. You have specified that you are focusing on two spheres, publishing games and providing your game portal. How can you define your unique selling proposition for the game portal? What's the business purpose of it?
It is not a portal which is reaching out to all gamers in the territories in which we are. It is merely a platform to combine the experience of our games into one. So we have 0 corporations publishing other games in that portal, which would of course be necessary if we had the goal at all to provide a full spectrum of titles on that. No, it is simply we invest a lot in marketing to get users into our universe, and by bringing them into a portal, we facilitate the cross-marketing from one title to the other. But we are not tying in third-party produce at all in that. In that sense, it is maybe not competing with standalone game portals which are there, which are necessarily implementing third-party games as well. It's simply a model for our rather few games, 20 or so, to make cross-marketing possible and a playing experience even more vivid after that you have maybe lost an interest after 8 months or so in one specific title.
I just wanted to recap something that you just said a second ago with the gentleman who asked a question before the last one. So you have a company of 700 people doing $100 million a year, and your statement just said...
Luckily more, as we have several years in the euro currency.
Yes,
At this
yes.
moment we're stronger than your dollar, but you never know what happens.
I'm American, I'll never believe that. And maybe more than $100 million, because although $100 million is certainly a large enough business for me. But you just stated in your rather quiet, understated way that you believe that that business is only possible because it's community-based.
Exactly.
So without a community, your business would cease
we
to
would
exist.
not be there at all. That's where we come
Wow.
from the very old game, and what we have always been doing. And if we would not have taken care of communities in the utmost fashion, we wouldn't be existing at all.
So we have time for one more question. Anything to say, Carsten?
Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to meeting all of you later face to face around here. Thanks.